It all started on a cold October evening in a sleepy little town called Norwell. You probably wouldn't find it on a map unless you were really looking. Just a dot on the edge of nowhere. A young woman named Rebecca moved there with her fiancé, Eric. They'd found an old Victorian house at a foreclosure auction. The place was dirt cheap, almost suspiciously cheap, but they didn't have much money and figured it was a blessing. From the outside, the house looked exactly like what you'd expect from a place that had stood empty for decades. Weathered wood, gnarled trees, and windows that seemed to peer back at you like watchful eyes. The locals didn't say much when Rebecca introduced herself. In fact, they seemed almost relieved to see someone else take it. One old man just mumbled, "Hope you never have to meet her," and shuffled away. The first night was uneventful. Rebecca and Eric were exhausted from hauling boxes. They laughed about how creepy the house was, how the floorboards seemed to sigh when they stepped on them, and how the cold drafts always came from rooms they hadn't even opened yet. It was around 2:30 in the morning when Rebecca woke up. She didn't know why at first, just that something felt wrong. The bedroom was freezing, far colder than the rest of the house. Then she heard it, a faint scratching. Not on the wall or outside the window. It was under the bed. She held her breath, straining to listen. For a few seconds, it stopped. And then, scratch, 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 something moved just beneath her. She shook Eric awake, but by the time he was up, the sound had vanished. He half joked it was probably mice, but the way he checked under the bed, flashlight trembling, told her he wasn't sure either. The next few days were worse. Doors slammed by themselves. Eric found all the kitchen chairs stacked on top of the table one morning. Rebecca started having nightmares. Always the same dream. She was standing in the long hallway outside their bedroom. At the end stood a woman in a tattered white dress, face hidden by long, stringy hair. Her hands were raw, scraped bloody, as if she'd been clawing at something for years. In the dream, the woman would slowly raise her head, and though Rebecca couldn't see her face, she always woke up screaming just before their eyes met. One night, after another episode of chairs moving and doors slamming, Eric suggested they bring in a local priest, just to ease their minds. Father Callahan was reluctant at first. He stood in the foyer for a long time, clutching his crucifix. Then he sighed heavily, told them to wait outside, and walked into the house alone. They waited on the porch for nearly an hour. When the door finally opened, Father Callahan was pale, sweating, eyes darting wildly. "Leave this place," he whispered. "It doesn't want you here. If you stay, it will take you, just like the rest." Before they could press him for details, he was already hurrying down the street, mumbling prayers under his breath. Eric tried to keep things calm. He said maybe the priest was senile, or maybe just spooked by the old stories. Rebecca almost believed him, until the night she woke up to Eric standing at the foot of the bed, staring at her. His eyes were wide, unblinking. Tears streamed down his cheeks. She whispered his name, terrified. He didn't respond, just kept staring, lips moving without sound. Finally, he croaked, "She says it's my turn," and then he collapsed to the floor, convulsing. Rebecca called 911, but when the paramedics arrived, they found Eric dead of what looked like a massive heart attack. The official report said natural causes, but Rebecca knew better. She stayed at a motel for weeks, terrified to go back, but eventually, money ran out. She couldn't sell the house. Who would buy it now? So she returned, alone, hoping whatever it was had gone with Eric. The first night back was silent, the second night too. On the third night, around 3 a.m., she woke up to that scratching again. Only this time, it was coming from the ceiling. She grabbed a flashlight and shakily climbed up into the attic. The air was so cold her breath came out in clouds. At the far end of the attic, she saw deep gouges in the beams, as if something with claws had been trapped up there for years. Then she spotted a filthy, tattered nightgown crumpled on the floor. As she leaned down to touch it, a cold hand wrapped around her ankle. She screamed and spun around, but no one was there. Just the echo of her own breath. From then on, Rebecca wasn't the same. Neighbors said they'd see her at all hours, wandering the yard, talking to someone only she could see. At night, lights flickered in every window, even the attic, though she never went up there again. One evening, a passing motorist spotted her standing in the upstairs window. eyes wide, mouth gaping in a silent scream. By the time police broke down the door, the house was empty. They found scratches on every wall, deep and fresh. In the attic, they found that same nightgown, soaked in something dark that hadn't quite dried. But Rebecca was never found. The house still stands on that lonely street. Sometimes, late at night, if you drive by slowly with your windows down, you'll hear it, faint scratching, and a woman's voice whispering from somewhere high above you. And if you're very unlucky, you'll look up into the attic window and see her, Rebecca, standing there with someone behind her. A woman in a tattered white dress, hair hanging over her face, watching you, waiting. So if you ever find yourself in Norwell, Massachusetts, and see a cheap old house up for sale, keep driving. Because once she knows your name, she never lets you leave.